Welcome back. You're watching 101. We're speaking with East Timorese President Jose Ramos-Horta, Nobel Peace Laureate from 1996. Now, apart from the Nobel Peace Prize, obviously a huge defining moment, in your eyes, what were the key moments in your life? What were the defining moments?
Yes, besides the Nobel Peace Prize, which embarrassed me, shocked me, I never expected it. I was in Sydney at the time. I was lecturing at the University of New South Wales. I lecture human rights. So I went out to practicing tennis on the Friday with a small niece, 4 years old, Sarah. She adored me, always followed me everywhere. And after tennis, I came back home to a very miserable apartment where my mother lived in the suburbs of Sydney. The phone rang, went to the phone. I was told by a journalist in Lisbon, "Can you comment, please? You have just won the Nobel Peace Prize." Well, I was shocked, embarrassed. Then returning to Timor in triumph, December 1st, 1999, after 24 years in exile, I arrived back home. Thousands and thousands of people welcomed me. Again, that was shock. I knew I was sort of popular. If 100 people had been there, I would have been surprised. But there were estimated 10,000 people there. I was very touched and humbled by that, because those who welcomed me were those who never left the country. They endured much more suffering than me. I was in New York, I was in Europe, I was in Australia. You cannot suffer that much.
I read actually how yourself and Bishop Carlos Belu got the prize together, but you said that Xanana Gusmao, who became the first president of East Timor, who was actually in jail at the time.
Yes,
you
exactly.
felt he deserved it better.
Yes, exactly. I was very embarrassed, and actually for a few days I hesitated talking with him. I said, "God, how am I going to face this? I won the Nobel Peace Prize. He's the one who should do it." Then I spoke with him finally, through illegal communication with him. He had a phone in his cell, and we often communicated. And he was so warm about it, so good about it, that it did help me. I no longer felt embarrassed about it.
You were active, though, from a very early age. In your 20s already, you were so active in promoting the idea of independence for East Timor. You were actually sent off into exile, and you spent a good, 24 years away?
Yes, 24 years abroad. I was in New York 15 years. I was then got really burned out in New York, no money. I arrived in the midst of winter in New York. I had never seen snow in my life, had never been to the UN. And my mission was to lobby the United Nations to take action on Indonesia's occupation of East Timor. I met with members of Security Council, met with the then Soviet ambassador to the UN, Jacob Malik, who had been with the UN since San Francisco, 1945. Well, as I was talking with him, he was sleeping. And back then I was very polite. Today I can be very rude with people, but back then I was young, coming out of Catholic school, Timorese village. Well, I was very polite, and because he was sleeping, I talked softly. And the more softly I talked, the more apparently he was sleeping. And I didn't want to wake him up because I thought he would be upset if I wake him up, and then he would not support us. But his aide was nodding to me to keep talking. That was my first experience with the UN, with Jacob Malik.
How much did the increase of your profile once you had the Nobel Peace Prize, how much did that help your cause and raise your voice? Did people listen that much more?
Yes, that helped enormously, opened the doors to me everywhere in Washington. And I have to say, as we talk, reflecting on my experience, one institution on this planet that I'm very grateful to is the US Congress. The administration was pretty much against us, but I then would go to Congress and found so many friends. God, from Senator Ted Kennedy, this giant of American politics, liberal politics, to Senator Tom Harkin, to Congressman Tony Hall, now he's no longer in office, Nancy Pelosi, some fantastic individuals who taught me that the US is not all bad. when you are disappointed with the administration and you get angry, but then you realize that there are people who are good, and they help tremendously. If anyone contributed to our freedom, was members of the US Congress.
Considering all you've been through, and we discussed a lot of this, personal family loss, the killing of so many of your people when the Indonesian troops came in, the years of exile you spent and everything else, how do you think it shaped you as a person now? When you look back, how differently do you think you've come out? You say you're not angry about anything really, are you?
No, I'm not. I could be angry at Indonesia. My mother is angry, but I have been one of the architects of the normalization of relations with Indonesia for two reasons. One, pragmatism, a giant neighbor, Indonesia and Australia, our two neighbors. Second, Indonesians also were victims. Hundreds of thousands died during the Suharto era, victimized by the Cold War. In 1999, the Indonesians freed themselves from the Suharto regime. As they freed themselves, they also walk away from East Timor. Well, and then they face the transition into democracy, very difficult challenges, internal challenges of all sorts. I would be irresponsible and it would be unfair to Indonesia if I were to call for an international tribunal, as some people demanded, an international tribunal on Indonesia. I have said even to my own people, we achieve our independence, our freedom, not through a military victory, but because Indonesia also changed. If Indonesia had not changed, we would not be free today. So let's forget the past and normalize the relation with Indonesia. And today we have an excellent relation with Indonesia and Australia.
Do you get time for yourself? Do you get a chance to pursue hobbies, do the things you want to do?
Yes, I enjoy particularly movies, all kinds of movies. I don't like too intellectual movies, some of the French movies are too philosophical, too intellectual.
You want to escape?
Yes, at the end of the day, I want to see aliens, Star Trek, some Bruce Willis, action-packed movie. No, I'm not into...
You've lived an action-packed life.
Yes.
You've been shot more times than Bruce Willis in real life.
Exactly. I'm not into philosophical, intellectual movies. No. At the end of the day, what do you want? You want even continuing philosophical discussions in the evening? No, people say I have sense of humor, and sometimes even with serious things I joke about it because it's like escape, self-defense mechanism. Sometimes even in the midst of trouble, I make a joke, and it is a self-defense mechanism. And so I avoid. At the end of the day, I prefer to watch movies. I read books, go out with friends. In Timor, we don't have too much entertainment.
You concentrate on the people?
Yes, concentrate on the people. I enjoy the common people. I enjoy the poor people. You learn so much from them.
If you were to be remembered a certain way, your legacy, what would you like that legacy to be?
Well, that I stood for the poor, but in some way I help some of them. I don't care much about, monuments and streets in my name. The reality is, on this earth, when we are alive, we try to help others. I try to help people one by one. I don't have this. I would like to help humanity, and I like to help the whole country. But one thing I do, and I'm proud of, is that every day of my life I help someone. $100 here, $1,000 there, $10,000 there, either myself doing it or I get people to help. If each of us do that, depend on our resources, well, we would have help many millions of poor around the world.
Well, Mr. President, I wish you a long life and more power to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.